Okay. Good evening. For the sake of those who are not familiar with the course, I would ask someone who has been coming on Wednesday evenings if they would share the meaning of the word miracles as the course uses it, because it is a rather specific use of the word. Is there anyone who would like to? Okay.
A miracle is a shift in consciousness, a shift in the way you look at things.
A sudden shift. Yes. It is a shift of awareness that happens, you might say, spontaneously. It happens when you are, I'm going to say, mentally undefended. It happens in moments when you are not sure of what anything means, or you are not confident, and you have let yourself into a neutral space. And when that happens, the penetration of clarity can occur and will occur because that's the nature of the way your mind works. It is not your birthright to be I'm going to say, solidified into a clear-cut, unequivocal definition of the meaning of life or the meaning of anything in your experience. In terms that you have provided. Because then you are bound to the definitions you have given. And the fact that everything you are experiencing is the presence of God constantly in the act of creation escapes your attention to the degree that you are absolutely confident that you know what everything means. When there is a moment where your consciousness is free of your constant reinforcement of your definitions, the penetration of the conscious experience of the movement of creation that God is being has the opportunity to occur. When that happens, that is what the Course refers to as a miracle. When this sudden shift of perception occurs, you see everything differently. And there are two characteristics to it, to the experience. One is that you experience in one form or another the divinity, the fact that there is a divinity to whatever is occupying your attention, whether it's your fellow man or an animal or nature or the universe. So that whatever lesser definitions you were holding about your fellow man, or whatever your attention is on, is suddenly replaced by a clarity about it that you didn't have before. The second thing, the second characteristic of this experience is that it becomes obvious to you that the divinity of this person or thing is directly derived from God, and that therefore your experience of this thing is some aspect of the experience of God. Now, you know, this sudden shift of perception may be very subtle. It may be you working with a client and suddenly experiencing a complete shift of awareness relative to this one that allows you to open up your mouth and say something utterly appropriate that isn't the least bit shocking or otherworldly, that touches this other one and promotes a shift in them, a release of something they had been binding themselves with. Sometimes the experience is more, you might say, dramatic. But the word miracle, as it's being used here, is not to be construed to mean something I'm going to say something more special than being able to relate with your world with more gentleness, with more kindness, with more thoughtfulness, with more compassion. With more love. So let miracles be that simple. Even though you are likely to find that in that simplicity, it will have a ripple out effect that far exceeds the apparent simplicity that you were expressing. Okay. Let us continue from where we left off, which was with Miracle Principle 47.
Number 47.
Yes.
The miracle is a learning device that lessens the need for time. It establishes an out-of-pattern time interval, not under the usual laws of time. In this sense, it is timeless.
Now, we're not going to make anything out of the ordinary here relative to the terms out-of-pattern time interval. I will simply say that when a choice was made to give things definitions, meanings that God is not intending in his manifestation of those things, you move into an intellectual function of the mind that can only be experienced in a linear fashion. And anything that happens in a linear fashion involves the experience that you call time. And it's sort of like being on a road that winds its way through the mountains that is relatively level, where you can't see what's around the next bend. And so you must wait until you get around the bend to see what's there. And that takes time. But if you had the means of moving vertically, you could see around the next bend, you could see in the distance, and in the larger grasp, you would know what it would have taken a long time to know by progressing on the road. An out-of-pattern time interval means that you simply step out of or lift above the linear track. In that raised or elevated position, you may be able to see that where you thought going in this direction would get you where you were wanting to go, it in fact will not, that you actually need to go east. And so, the perspective that you are experiencing will save you time. Time to learn what moving in a linear fashion would require time to learn. Now, another way I'll put it is this. When you're absolutely sure of something, when you're absolutely sure that things are not going well, that everything is going down the tubes, and when you're absolutely sure that circumstances are such that there's no alternative to this track that things are on, you lock yourselves in to not seeing it any other way. But if you are willing to consciously stop and become still with a curiosity to see things differently, to see a way that you can't see at the moment, when you're willing even momentarily to consciously abandon your confidence in how terminal your experience is going to be, then there is a space into which clarity can penetrate. And that clarity, for lack of better words, moves you ahead instantly into the realization of what to do to have a different experience, without your having to go through a linear thinking process of reasoning to arrive at a different way of looking at it. And so there is an instantaneous clarity that didn't take time. You stepped out of the time sense which is inherent in thinking processes. That's it in a nutshell. Let's continue on.
48.
Yes.
The miracle is the only device at your immediate disposal for controlling time. Only revelation transcends it, having nothing to do with time at all.
It's an interesting choice of words, controlling time. The only thing it really allows you to control is the apparent inevitability of having to take time to learn. Because it literally puts you out of time. It controls time in the respect that it causes time to stop controlling you. Okay.
May I ask a question?
You may.
Could you, what is the difference between miracle and revelation?
That's coming soon.
Okay.
49. The miracle makes no distinction among degrees of misperception. It is a device for perception correction, effective quite apart from either the degree or the direction of the error. This is its true indiscriminateness.
Yes. A misperception is a misperception. It's the consequences of a misperception that seem to be consequential, big or little. But a misperception is just a misperception. And there is not a big misperception and a little misperception any more than the life expressed in a gnat is any less life than the life expressed in an elephant. You see what I'm saying? There are not degrees of life. It is whole. It is fully life, whether it's a flea or an elephant that you're talking about. A misperception is simply a misperception, and a miracle is simply a correction of it. Because misperceptions have no degrees of size, we'll say, then it doesn't take a bigger miracle to correct one misperception than it takes to correct another. And this is very important. It's important to understand, because if you understand it, you will realize how beneficial it is to do nothing more than to stop in your tracks when you're dead sure that everything is going wrong and you better brace yourself for it, and express a little bit of, and I'm going to say, innocent curiosity. And by that I mean curiosity that isn't colored by your confidence that everything is actually going to collapse. With that little bit of willingness, it allows the little bit of clarity that spontaneously corrects the misperception, which has no size, you see. So the problem, or truly the consequences to the problem you perceive, are not any more difficult to correct by insight or clarification than another which you would deem to be a little problem. So it's very important to understand this, because it will give you a sense of the ease with which the problem can be solved, because the solving of the problem will come with the correction of a misperception, and corrections of misperception are utterly simple. Okay, let's continue. I know many of you thought we would never get to miracle principle number 50, but we have.
The miracle compares what you have made with creation, accepting what is in accord with it as true, and rejecting what is out of accord as false.
For those of you who aren't familiar with the language, the use of language in the Course, this says the miracle compares what you have made, meaning the definitions that you have given to everything that you're absolutely sure of and which you would stake your life on, as opposed to what it is actually as God is being it right now, which is creation. So it compares what we will say what you have made up in your own mind. It compares what you have made up with what creation actually is, accepting what is in accord with it as true, because you don't misperceive everything totally. And so some of what you experience is a true apprehension of what it really is. So it compares this sudden shift of awareness, compares what is in accord with creation as true, and rejecting what is out of accord as false. And mind you, this happens within you as an experience, not really as an intellectual process. You experience a new way of looking at it in which you just suddenly see that the way you had been interpreting it was false. And because it's obviously false to you at an experiential level within you, you discard it because it's obviously not useful to you anymore. So you see, you can instantaneously experience, you can have an instantaneous experience that suddenly puts you in a new place without there having been any process to it. And that's the nature of a miracle. Now, once again, I will share with you that a shift of perception always has an effect. Not just on the way you're looking at things, but it has an effect on the way you behave toward your world. It has an effect on the way you behave toward your brother. And whether you put into words the clarification that has happened in you, that clarification, that truer perception of your brother or of your world is felt. And it truly instigates or gives impetus to change from your world. Some of the changes might be termed miraculous, like an instantaneous healing of a disease, or an instantaneous harmonizing of a relationship, without having to go through psychological processes called therapy. There may be effects which others would call miraculous, but those aren't the miracle. The miracle is you having allowed, one way or another, a moment of defenselessness within yourself. A moment where you weren't reinforcing your confidences in your definitions about everything, so that there was a space where what's really going on could register with you. That's the meaning of the word miracle as it's used in the Course. That is the miracle. And that is utterly simple, isn't it? You don't have to go to college and get a degree to arrive at this. You don't have to effort at all. In fact, the miracle happens in the absence of personal effort. It happens in a moment of humility. It happens in a moment of peace. It happens in a moment of effortlessness. It happens in a moment when you are not putting effort forth. That's how simple it is. And I say this so that you might recognize the extreme value of moments in which you have abandoned willfulness. Before we leave this list of the miracle principles, does anyone have any comments or questions besides Michael? Michael?
I was listening to a September 15th CD of these meetings, and there was one of the numbered articles here that talked about confusion of levels of perception. No, a confusion of levels it talked about. And you said that there was no reason to go into that at that time. And the interesting thing about it was that in order to say, for instance, we live in the third dimension, and
continue.
Okay, we're living in a three-dimensional frame of reference, and there's over top of this there's a fourth dimensional frame of reference, and so I got the impression that when they talked about a confusion of levels, is that we're mistaking a fourth dimensional experience for a three-dimensional experience and vice versa, and so I don't know which article it was, but my question is about this confusion of levels. And if you could, at this time, explain to us what it meant by confusion of levels.
Well, it still is not time to discuss it.
But you'll let me know when it's time?
We will discuss it.
So I can be here? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
I will tell you that you're not far off track, but we simply won't go into it further at this time. Any other?
Oh, you want that name? Pass it to the back.
What do we do next? No. You wanted me to have the microphone next? Okay. Where are we? Okay. Revelation, Time, and Miracles.
Section 2.
Section 2. And do I start at Revelation? Right there?
Indeed. Yes.
Okay. Revelation induces complete but temporary suspension of doubt and fear. It reflects the original form of communication between God and His creations, involving the extremely personal sense of creation sometimes sought in physical relationships. Physical closeness cannot achieve it. Miracles, however, are genuinely interpersonal, and result in true closeness to others. Revelation unites you directly with God.
I'm going to interrupt.